skirt, and I'm going to start by cutting out my fabric. This is a like almost lightweight sweatpants material in gray, and I am so excited about it. So I'm just lining up my skirt now. I'm going to cut it out, and I'm going to cut it a little bit longer because I kind of want it to be like sporty below the knee sort of length. So I'm just gonna start cutting that out here. And everything else is gonna be sewn just the same. But I really wanted to talk about pattern hacks tonight because it can really help you make the things that you wanna make with patterns that you have, which I think is really important. Learning how to make things with what you already have. We are going to be making the Peggy pencil skirt. Hello everybody. Hello tonight. We are making the Peggy pencil skirt. I'm just quickly cutting out my pattern pieces because of course I meant to be cut out. I was not. What's new though, right? How's it going, everybody? I'm just cutting out my skirt here really quickly. Hi everybody. Tonight we are working on the Peggy pencil skirts. So I'm going to go through the instructions live here and cover a couple things, a couple concepts we're going to cover tonight. We're going to talk about zippers, we're going to talk about hems, we're going to talk about a classic pocket, and I'm also going to talk about how you can make what you want out of a pattern that you already have, which I think is really important. Being able to look at the pattern and say, you know, I want this to be so many inches long, and then actually make it that many inches long so that it kind of turns out the way you want it to turn out instead of being shorter than you expected, which also happens when you are sewing. And I am actually making this a little bit longer today because I want it to be a sporty below the calf, or not below the calf, but below the knee below the knee skirt. How's it going, everybody? Okay, so I am just cutting out my fabric really quickly here. Again, I meant to be cut out before, but it didn't happen. So I chose to do something a little bit different tonight. The last few times that we made the Peggy pencil skirt, we made them out of woven fabric. And I got asked what happens if you make it out of a knit fabric. And so I wanted to kind of address the issues and the differences here. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it my normal size, and then I'm going to make sure that I try it on before I add that waistband and see if there's any additional fit issues that I need to feel out, to see if it needs to be tighter, if it needs to be looser, those types of things. So I have my Peggy pencil skirt pattern, and that link is in the link in my bio under Sewing Saturdays or in the shop. waistband needs to be. Hello, everybody. How's it going? We're here for Wednesday night pattern action. Wednesday night pattern work in here. Sometimes I just use this time to work out some pattern work here and see if my pattern works. I need to do pattern testing, which is also really important. If you do any kind of client work or you do any work for people that they're ordering something off of you. A lot of people on here have a desire to have an Etsy shop, which is also really cool. So anybody that has any type of aspirations for pattern work, I'm going to be showing you guys tonight some pretty cool patterning skills, we'll say. Some pattern hacks, if you will. I'm just gonna cut here. Cut my waistband out. Hello, everyone. Ontario, Canada. Hey, how's it going? We are live every single week. I usually push my Saturday classes because those are more popular than the Wednesday nights. So we're live every single week, Wednesday night and Saturday afternoon. And I have a page in my link in bio, and if you go under Sewing Saturdays, that's the information page for when class is and what we're going to be doing for class every single week. So if you want to check that out, we're actually live every single week right now, and also on Saturday mornings. So today I am working on the Peggy pencil skirt, and I am just cutting out my waistband really quickly. And I wanted to address tonight some questions that I had the last time I made it. So the skirt is originally intended for wovens to be a straight pencil skirt in a fabric that really doesn't have any stretch to it. And I got asked, what if you did choose a woven knit fabric or a knit fabric? And so I wanted to talk about that tonight. I am prepared with it's a lightweight sweatpants kind of material fabric. And so I thought that would be really cool, like a sporty pencil skirt. So that is what I am making tonight. So I have everything but my pockets cut out here. Let's do the pockets real quick. Now, one cool thing about knit fabrics, sometimes they have a four-way stretch, which means they stretch in this direction and they stretch in this direction, right? So for something like a pocket facing, facings are to hold structure, And so what I'm going to choose to do on this fabric here is, because this is only a two-way stretch, so this stretches this way here, but not this way. So I'm going to cut out, hello, how's it going? Hi, you're my neighbor next door, how cool. So I am going to cut out the fabric for my pocket facing in the way that it does not stretch, because the pocket facing is supposed to hold the shape for the pockets. Now, if the fabric stretched in four ways, say it was a spandex, a true spandex, then you would want to make sure that you put some type of interfacing in your pocket seam line for your pocket facing. Again, pocket facings hold the shape of the pocket along the seam line. And anything with a facing in general, facings, when they are sewn to the outside of a garment and they are flipped inside, they finish off the raw edge. So it's really important to make sure that that edge, if you don't want it to be something that stretches out of shape, it can stretch out of shape and be a little crazy. You want to make sure that your facings are either have if it's knit fabric, you want to make sure that your facings have interfacing or that they don't have stretch in that direction. So it was a lot. Hello. Yes, I will tell my daughter you said hello. I will. Okay, so we are working on, if you just joined us, we are working on the Peggy pencil skirt tonight. So that link is in my bio under Sewing Saturdays. And on this pattern, you need two pocket facings, and then 2 pocket pieces. So I'm just gonna cut those out really quickly, and then I am gonna start sewing through the instructions. The pattern comes with a full set of sewing instructions, which I'm gonna show you tonight. So this will be your sneak peek chance to see them. How's everybody doing? I have been sewing for, it's probably almost 20 years now. But I also have degrees in fashion design. I have a degree in fashion design. I have a degree in fashion merchandising, which you have to take sewing for both of those. And then I have a master's in business. So I have been sewing for quite a long time, not as long as a lot of other people that have told me here on the channel. There's a lady that told me she had been sewing for 60 years, which is awesome. You're still sewing, still able to sew. But I have been sewing for about 20 years now. I've worked in costume shops for theater. I have worked for designers. Currently, I am sample making and pattern making freelance for companies, which I love. How is everybody doing? Can you see the pattern? Yes. So right now we are working on, this is the Peggy pencil skirt. Sorry that TikTok is going to be backwards here. This is the Peggy pencil skirt, and so the pattern pieces, when you print the pages out, this is a print on demand pattern, so when you print the pages out, you cut them on the lines and basically tape them together so you can print them out at home. And when you do that, then I have in my pattern a pattern assembly guide, which I think is absolutely important here. And it looks like this, and it shows you when you lay all your pages out together, what direction they go in, and then that way you can see the pieces in case you get lost on the pattern. So this is what all of the pieces look like here. And so like I have this is the pocket, the piece that is the pocket, and this one is the pocket facing. And so then when they go together, you have your slanted front with the rest of the piece that makes the skirt. Hope that helps. So this is a print on demand pattern that I have in my shop. It is in my link in bio under Sewing Saturdays. It has all of the information for, we're gonna sew the same skirt on Saturday, just so you know. In case you're interested, in case you like class tonight, we're gonna sew it again. I try to make sure that I'm doing the same thing so that in case I catch anybody Wednesday night that's interested, you can actually follow along. But also I have the playbacks for my classes on my page, on my Sewing Saturdays page that I've mentioned. The playback is on that page at the very bottom. I have all of the playbacks for the classes. So if you're just catching this and you're not able to sew along tonight, that's totally fine. If you want to watch, you want to follow along that way. And then if you want to go back and try the project, it will be on that Sewing Saturdays page. And the full playbacks are available there. I have only been doing these sewing classes here for a few weeks now. I have taught sewing plenty of times in the past. Usually it's one-on-one individual classes because I like to work with people in person. But this is my New Year's resolution to get on here in front of all of you and to be teaching live. It's a little informal, but I kind of like it. So I'm actually going to lay out my skirt so that you guys can see it. And we're going to start sewing the pockets. So this skirt has slanted classic front pockets. So the classic pocket cuts into the front of the garment, and then the rest of the pocket fills out the side of the skirt, okay? And so we're going to talk about that now. I will show you. So this is what the skirt pattern front looks like. And as it goes around the body, it has this gap here. And the pocket, the back part of the pocket actually fills this gap. And that way when you stick your hand in here, you have your pocket. So that's the part that we're gonna sew right now. And so I'm gonna lay my skirt front down, and it's gonna be facing up to me. And then I'm going to lay my pocket facings right sides down so that right sides are together. When you are sewing, most patterns will have you put the pieces right sides together unless it's specified that you're sewing the wrong sides together. But you'll always want to make sure that you check, because it will say for sure in the instructions here. How is everybody doing? Is anybody following along tonight? Anybody sewing along with us here? Okay, I am just laying my pocket facing. So this is what my pocket facing piece looks like here. And I am laying down my right sides together. On this fabric, it seems to be that the right side is a little bit darker than the wrong side. So I'm gonna go with that. And I actually think I do need a little bit of interfacing because I don't want this to stretch out of shape here. So on a knit fabric, there is something called stretch interfacing for knit fabrics. And these here, I think I can get away with it. Okay, so I'm gonna pin my pocket line. Now on this pattern, the pocket line has a notch. And the notch, anytime you see a notch on a pattern, you're gonna wanna make sure that so the notch is right about here. No, you can't see it on the camera. So the notch is right here. So you're gonna sew down the seam line and you're gonna stop right at the notch. That is always important. If you're looking at a pattern or you're transferring pattern information from your pattern to your fabric, it is always a good idea to make sure that you're transferring all the markings. And you can do that with different kinds of pens, different kinds of chalk. I happen to have a chalk roller that I love by Clover, company Clover. So right now I am sewing this seam right here. I'm sewing down this seam. This is what I have pinned. And I'm gonna sew from this top waist down to the notch point. On both pocket facings, I'm sewing the pocket facing to the skirt front. One down. I'm going to sew the other one, and then we're going to talk about understitching. So I have sewn one pocket facing to my skirt front. I'm going to sew the other one real quick. And I'm sewing from the waist to the notch point only. I'm doing my back stitches at my front, my starting point and my ending point. And a back stitch is where I like to do 3 stitches forward, and then you hold your reverse button, you do 3 stitches back, and then you continue on sewing. And that gives you an anchor at the start of your seam and at the end of your seam so that your stitches don't just pull right out of your garment. Okay, so let's show you what this looks like here. So this is my pocket facing sewn to my skirt front, right? But when this folds back, it doesn't lay very nice, we'll say, okay? So when it folds back, it kind of wants to like flop forward here, right? Because it's kind of flimsy. Excuse me. So we're gonna do something called understitching. And understitching is when you have the seam allowance and you basically push it to the side of the facing, the side of the part that's gonna be inside the garment, and you're gonna stitch really close to that seam that you just sewed, but you're gonna sew down the seam allowance here. You're gonna sew it down to the side of the pocket facing so that it's not sticking up, okay? So I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna show you why that's important. On any garment where you have a seam that needs to be crisp and needs to lay down really nice and flat, you'll see this around collars, you'll see this around like wrists, you'll see this definitely for pockets, like everywhere. And it's just a small 1/8 of an inch away from the seam that you already sewed. And you're gonna, again, sew it to the notch point and stop. And this is gonna hold down your seam allowance. So now it's only laying in one direction, right? And then when I fold over the edge of my pocket, I don't have to try. It's already laying nice and flat so that when I press this, it's gonna be so crisp. And this is sweatpants material, right? So this understitching, right? I don't even have to work at it. It's already nice and crisp, and it also gives it a little bit more structure on that seam. So I'm gonna do my understitching on this one here. And then we'll attach the pocket piece. The pocket piece will be next. So I am understitching my second pocket facing. And you shouldn't be stitching on the front of your garment, you should be stitching inside the pocket facing, so that when the pocket is turned, that seam line is actually on the inside of your garment, it is not on the front face of your skirt. Okay. So now I have my pocket facings are sewn, pocket facings, right? And so these get turned and the facing goes on the inside of the skirt. So that just finishes that raw edge of the pocket line. And if you can see here, I'm going to rotate my camera down for Facebook here. I can see you. I am live on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok right now. So I'm gonna make sure everybody can see what I'm doing. I am making a skirt. This is the Peggy pencil skirt. It is in my link in bio under Sewing Saturdays. Also in my shop, we are live every week for class. So you should be able to catch us. Right now I am trying out Wednesday night class and Saturday afternoon. So this is my skirt front and these are my skirt facings here. Let's see if you guys can see what's going on. All right, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to place my pocket pieces. The pocket pieces are going to go onto the pocket facing, and then you sew the pocket curve only. So I have this pocket piece and this pocket piece. Okay. And so what you want to do is you want to sew only the pocket. Okay, So this is the pocket curve, and I'm going to sew only the pocket to the pocket facing along the curve, okay? All the way down the piece from the top, all the way to the side, and you're only sewing the pocket to the pocket facing. So this makes it like a separate flap on the inside. So you're not sewing it to the skirt, you're not sewing it through the front of the skirt, you're only sewing the pocket to the pocket facing and only along the pocket curve. So I'm just gonna put a quick few pins in here so I know, so it stays together. I'll pick it up. How is everybody doing tonight? Anybody getting warm weather yet? We were sunny in Texas today. Sunny, nice, warm weather. T-shirt and shorts by the time it was ready to walk home from school with my kids. Okay, so we are gonna sew the pocket only, the pocket curve on both pieces. Does anybody have any questions while I'm here at this stage? I know a lot of people like to just watch the magic happen on Wednesday nights. Let me show you real quick while I'm thinking of it. So the pattern that I have together here, it's a whole packet comes with it, and I just want to show you what we've covered so far here. We have covered on the sewing instructions, we have sewn the pocket facing along the line and then understitched the pocket, and then right now we are sewing the pocket facing to the pocket, just the pocket to the pocket facing along the curve. That's what step we're on. -2 in Northern Ontario. Well, I mean, at least you're getting warmer, right? From -20, that's warmer. This machine here is a Brother machine. This is the one I show on for tutorials. It is linked in my recommendations if you can't find it. It's an XM2701. This is just a regular light duty machine. I want to make sure that everybody that watches the tutorials can feel like whatever they're watching is attainable. I do like to do some videos where I show special machinery. I'm going to get a little bit more into those soon. But for right now, for the sewing classes, I find that a lot of people want to use what they might have available to them. So right now I'm sewing on a Brother. It is an XM2701, and it is linked in my link in bio under products I recommend, if you can't find it. So I am sewing my pocket facing to my pocket. And I probably will go back and serge these edges so that they have a nice clean edge when I'm done with this class here, because I do want to wear this skirt and I'm very excited about it. So the only difference that I'm doing tonight is I am making the skirt a little bit longer than the pattern, because I want this skirt to hit a little bit lower below my knee. But I am 5'10", so you'll want to make sure that when you go to do the pattern, when you go to sew it for yourself or for whoever you're sewing it for, to take measurements. So another thing that I like to talk about with skirts classes, especially, we're just beginning with skirts classes on my channel here. I want to make sure that you guys are understanding the importance of taking measurements. So under my link in bio on my shop, I have a free measurement guide workshop, a worksheet that's a free guide for this week. It'll probably be free for this week and next week, and then it'll probably go back to regular price. Right now, because we're talking so much about taking those measurements, it is linked for my class resources right now. So also in your pattern though, in your pattern guide, I do include a brief measurement sheet here that asks you to take your measurements of your waist, your petite hip, and your full hip, right? So these will be your guide measurements, and then you look down here to see what size you should cut out. So I do have this in the pattern packet so that you have an idea of what measurements you should take before picking out what size you should cut out. So if you are petite and you are maybe shorter than average, I don't want to say average, if you're shorter or you're taller or whatever it is, you would adjust the length for the amount of skirt that you actually want to cut out. -14 in Quebec. We got a lot of people from Canada here. Hey, how's it going? All right, so I am sewing. Again, I'm sewing my pocket to my pocket facing along the pocket curve only. And then I'm going to, we're going to start working on the skirt back, and then we're going to attach the skirt back to the skirt front. And then we're going to talk about some zippers and hems at our waistband here. So I have sewn my pocket to my pocket facing. And now now like I showed you at the beginning of class here, when this pocket turns right side out, the little bit of extra front skirt that is missing gets filled out by this pocket piece. So this is my skirt front, this is my skirt front, and this is my pocket, okay? So one more thing that is on the pattern instructions at this step is stay stitching. So stay stitching is something that holds your pattern or your piece or whatever it is into the seam allowance before you go into your next step. So you should be, I like to stay stitch, or you can pin, it doesn't matter. So let me show you from the back side here. This is the inside of the skirt. Now this pocket is flapping around here, flapping in the wind. So you're gonna want to put it where it's supposed to go, line it up, and then where that seam line is gonna be, stay stitching is sewing it inside the seam allowance. So you're gonna sew it like 1/4 of an inch. If the seam allowance is 1/2 of an inch, you sew it 1/4 of an inch, so that when you go back to sew the skirt to this will be the waistband. If you go to sew the skirt to the waistband, that stay stitching is not in your way, it doesn't show up at all. So it's actually out of the way, but it holds the pattern pieces together as one. So now my pocket, if I pin it, I'm gonna pin it down at the bottom too, so you guys can see it. That way my pocket moves with the skirt front as one solid piece. Now that is called stay stitching, and that is stitching inside the garment seam allowance, so at like 1/4 of an inch. And what that does, so you would stitch here and you would stitch here along the pocket, and what that does is it holds it as one piece. So now my pocket is not flapping around anymore, it's all one piece, okay? So that's called stay stitching. And you would just, on your machine, you're gonna stitch at 1/4 of an inch, and that's gonna hold the piece in place. Now, another place that you will see stay stitching a lot is if you have an overlay. And what is overlay? An overlay is if you have like a lace on top of a colored piece. So you have maybe black lace on top of a red skirt or something like that. You would stay stitch all the way around the piece to hold two pieces together as one. So that is my stay stitching, and that holds my piece together. And I have sewn it inside the seam allowance at 1/4 of an inch inside the seam allowance. So when I go to sew my waistband on, my waistband is sewn down here, it's not affected at all because that stay stitching is already built into the seam allowance. For a French person, sewing words are hard to to translate, yes. I find that a lot. I find it a lot, like you understand the term. I watch a lot of Russian sewing videos, and it's hard to understand sometimes, but then you see it happen and you're like, oh, okay, I know what that is. I am also going to be adding, I don't have currently, but I'm also going to be adding a glossary to my sewing patterns probably this week and update those so that they have a glossary with them, because I think it's really important if you don't understand what the term is in the instructions. It's also really helpful sometimes if you, I like to go to YouTube and just type that term in, and usually there's videos that come right up that will kind of talk you through what that is, what the function of it is, why you're using it, because it's so easy to skip steps when you are sewing. You don't understand the purpose or the importance of something. Okay, so I have my entire skirt front. Okay, my entire skirt front and the pockets. So now it is time. I'm going to, the next step in the instructions here, I'll just show you. The next step in the instructions is to sew the center back seam, the center back panels from the full hip down to the center back. And this step is important because, and I've left out the section at the top. Depends on what kind of zipper you're going to put in as to what you need to do at the top of your skirt. If you're going to do an invisible zipper, you do not need to stitch that at the top. But if you are going to be doing a like a regular zipper where you're going to stitch down the top part here, you're going to want to make sure that you, excuse me here, you're going to want to make sure that you do stitch. So you can do basting. It depends on the zipper, obviously. The zipper manufacturer instructions is going to be different for every type of zipper. Last time that I sewed this, I did some videos on the, I did a exposed zipper. And so you can actually baste your seam together at the top and then come back after you've sewn your exposed zipper on, because it holds the pieces together. So right now I'm sewing from the hem to the full hip on my skirt, which is a long way because I cut it extra long. If your fabric is going to be a fabric that frays or the threads pull out, like a tweed or a plaid or a flannel, something like that, you can either serge or zigzag the edge if you don't have a serger. And then also check your machine settings. Most machines now have an overlock stitch, which is really cool. Just check your machine settings, because you'd be surprised at how many machines now have this overlock stitch. And a lot of people always ask me, because I like to show the serger, because I like to wear the clothes that I make. So I like to show my serger and show what the function is, because if you're on the fence about buying it, if you're going to be making something that will be worn, or you're going to be making something that you're going to sell to a customer to wear, you're going to want to make sure that you're finishing the edges of your garment, because it's super important. Okay, so the skirt front, I have my skirt back on the table. Skirt back is on the table, and this is my center back here for my zipper, center back seam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the skirt down. We're going to do right sides together. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to sew all the way down the side seam, right past my pocket, through my pocket, and all the way down to the hem. So super, super easy skirt, but it's one that I feel like you're gonna wanna make a million times after you make it once. So right now I am just pinning down the side seam. At the top here, you're gonna pin through the pocket. This is the pocket. I'm sorry if this is hard to see gray on gray today. So this is your pocket, and I'm just pinning straight down the side seam of the pocket, and all the way straight through. So you're just gonna keep sewing as if it's one solid piece. And it's gonna catch that pocket in the side seam. So just pin all the way down the side. And then I'm gonna sew all the way down both sides. And again, because this is a knit fabric, I am gonna come back with my serger after this class and serge. It just takes too long to come through and serge. Lucky to have YouTube now. Yes, I am working on my YouTube channel. It's really hard to go anywhere on multiple platforms all at the same time. I love YouTube. I think that video is so important now. I think a lot of people learn so much through video. I learn so much on TikTok every week. It's crazy. It's crazy how much we learn on the internet. Okay, so right now we are doing, quick recap, the Peggy pencil skirt in my link in bio under Sewing Saturdays or the shop. Sewing Saturdays is going to be the page where you find what's coming up for the next week. Every single week, we're live every week. You're going to find what's coming up, what pattern to get if you want to sew along with us. And also, there is a email registration on that page if you're interested. Every week on Monday morning, I send out an email with what we're going to be doing that week. It's completely non-spammy, and it just tells you what's going to be happening in class so that you know if you want to join along. So I am just going to sew down the side seam of my garment, okay? So this is the inside, so you can see the pockets here. This is the pockets, and then you can see right here down the side seam is where I'm going to sew. So I'm going to sew my skirt front to my skirt back, and then I will try it on real quick so you guys can see it. And then we're gonna sew on the waistband. Just sewing my side seams down the side seam of my skirt. If you guys are interested, the next sewing class is Saturday afternoon. It's 12 noon Eastern time. But if you can't make it to class, or you only catch part of this class tonight, these class playbacks are on the Sewing Saturdays page under the link in my bio, under Sewing Saturdays, and all the way at the bottom, I have my YouTube playback list for my class playbacks, so that everything is in one place on that Sewing Saturdays page. So I have sewn one side seam here. I'll sew the next side seam real quick so you guys can see it. And then we will attach the waistband. And we've got a skirt. We've got a skirt already. Tried to mean business tonight. We're looking at 45 minutes. The skirt in 45 minutes plus talking. just skipping over the pocket seam here so that I can go back and serge it a little bit before I take pictures of the inside. Because as my design teacher would always tell us, the inside of your garment should just look as good as the outside. If you are somebody who is interested in learning how to sew because you want to create your own sewing brand or your own line of clothing or products, paying attention to the inside of the garment is very important. The better your finishings are, the more you can charge, especially. All right. And we have a skirt minus the waistband. Okay, so somebody just commented about sewing standing up. I sew standing all the time. I think it's especially a lot more attractive for a class, an online class. It gives me a little bit more freedom. This desk is a sit to stand desk, so I'm able to put it up and down. So if I'm not in the mood to stand or having a bad back day, I can put it down and I can sit to sew, or if I'm going to be sewing for a really long time. So this here is my skirt, and I will show you real quick what this looks like. And then I'm going to add the waistband. So I just want to make sure that it fits the same as a knit. So the pockets here, you can see that pocket line right here, pocket line, and then the back. And then again, I know you guys can't see this, but it is like mid calf length on me. So I really wanted, there's gonna be a waistband. So I really want it to be like a sporty style pencil skirt here. So this is the pocket. This is the pocket that you can see here. And then the skirt back. Now this skirt does have darts on the pattern. And if you're not familiar with sewing darts, that is okay. So as you try it on, if it's for you, then you can kind of pinch the darts and see how much you need to take off. But if it's not for you, the best way, again, back to measurements, the best way to do the darts is to look at your client's measurements and look at the waist of the garment. And then you're going to subtract the amount that you need to take off to make it match those waist measurements. I'm so sorry, I'm trying to read. It looks awful on after you finished it. So yes, so the comment is, the problem I have with sewing clothes is what if it looks awful on you after you've finished it? Then you've wasted material and time. Yes. So this happens. It happens to me a lot, especially when I'm currently, so I have 4 kids and my youngest one is 18 months and I am currently not happy with my body at this stage in my life, and it makes it really difficult to like what you've just made, and all the time that you've put into it and all the money that you've put into it. So I would recommend working on projects that are smaller scale until you have the confidence to make yourself something, or start with smaller projects, tops, that kind of stuff. I think skirts are a really cool place to start because it's an easy silhouette, straightforward plan, and I mean, who doesn't love a pencil skirt, right? I also, last week we did the wrap skirt pattern that's in my link in bio as well, and I think that they are easy sew and kind of look good on everybody. It's an easier project to make. The harder stuff, you know, gowns and all kinds of craziness, if you get into that kind of stuff, by that time you will have had quite a lot of practice under your belt. And so when you're sewing that kind of stuff, you'll already be ready and confident. And if you start sewing projects, there's a client on here, or a person that follows my classes all the time, who wants to sew little kids' tutus for an Etsy shop, which is awesome. It's an awesome place to start because it's an easy project, and everybody loves them, right? Or you can start sewing for your kids, because when they're little, they don't really care. But so I think that skirts is obviously the best place to start. We start with skirts in design school, and the reason for that is it builds your confidence, because you can make a million skirts and wear them all. And once you get that, initial, hey, that's a really cool skirt, where'd you get it? And you tell them that you made it. It basically puts all the wind in your sails, to make more and to get more confident with them. And on every project, you learn something that you didn't know before, which is obviously so important. So on this skirt here, I have left darts, waistband, hem, and zipper. And it's been almost an hour. So I'm gonna take a drink of water because I always do that at my hour mark. It's really important to make sure that you stay hydrated. Super important. Okay, so for my darts, so to sew darts, you're going to go back to your pattern, and you are going to lay your pattern down, and you're going to mark out either the darts on here, or like I said, if you do either by measurements or you do it by fitting yourself, you put it on and you say, this is my dart amount here. You pin it, take it off, put it down on top of the pattern, and then you mark out the amount that you need to take off, and you mark out where your dart is, okay? Your dart should be halfway between your side seam and your center front. So you would measure this distance and divide it by 2, and that's where the center of that dart should fall, because that's basically where it looks the best. And if you have a very large dart, you're going to want to split it over multiple darts. So you would do one dart here and then one dart here, evenly spaced, if you have a dart that's larger than 1 inch. You can also take some of it off of the side seam if you have way too much fabric in the front, but don't just pull it off to the side and think that that's going to work, because most of the time it doesn't. So I am going to mark a dart, and I'm going to sew a dart for you guys so that you can see that. On this pattern here, I have 2 darts in the front, 2 darts in the back, and my darts happen to be 1/2 inch at the top and 6 inches long. So I am just transferring my dart markings from my pattern to my skirt. And then I'm going to sew my dart. So when you have your dart marked, right? So this pin represents the top center of my dart, and this pin represents the dart point where I'm going to stop. So I fold the fabric in half, matching the top one and the bottom one, so that I have a nice straight line. And I know that the line is straight when I match up the waistband on both sides, right? So I know that line is straight. And then I put some pins perpendicular, so not the same direction, but against, perpendicular at a 90-degree angle, to hold my fabric nice and flat while I sew it. And then I have a trick on darts that I love to teach. So the top of my dart is at 1/2 inch. So my total dart is 1 inch. So you're sewing half of your dart measurement because it's folded. right? So when you open it up, your entire inch is gone. So at the top of my dart, which is a 1/2 of an inch away, I start my anchor stitches. So I do my back stitch, which is 3 stitches forward, 3 stitches back with my reverse, and then I would sew. But my trick that I do in this step is I put my needle down and I lift my presser foot up, okay? Now I rotate the fabric so that the point of the bottom of the dart is straight in line with my sewing line. So at this point, I rotate the fabric so that I'm gonna be sewing a straight line instead of trying to like guess and wiggle off the fabric, okay? So now, because I have rotated my fabric off to the side, my dart point at the very bottom is straight line from the top of the dart. So now I'm gonna continue sewing all the way to the bottom, and I'm just tapering down to nothing at that bottom dart point. Because now I'm sewing my straight line. And when you get to the bottom, you're gonna do your back stitches and you're gonna run off the fabric. But you do 1 stitch over and then 1 stitch back, the machine automatically knots at the very bottom off the edge. So you don't actually have to tie it. Some people actually stop and tie those 2 threads at the very bottom of the dart, which is smart. That way it never becomes undone. But I've found that if you do that back stitch right at the end of it and you do 1 stitch off the fabric and 1 stitch back on, the machine automatically knots it for you. And I am clipping my threads as I go so that I have not a huge mess at the end. So this is my dart. If you can see, that seam line is right here, okay? And then when you open it up, you have your dart. Okay, so I started at a 1/2 of an inch at the top and stitched down to nothing at the end. And what that does, darts reduce the bulk of fabric so that it fits the body better. You see that? So it's a 1/2 of an inch, 1 full inch at the top from side to side, and then all the way down to nothing. And that just takes all the extra fabric out at the top down to nothing, okay? So that is my dart. Does anybody have any questions on the dart? Darts can be super intimidating, guys. They can be super intimidating, but once you sew them a few times, they're not that bad. So now the next thing I want to talk about on this skirt is going to be the waistband. So the waistband for this skirt is a straight waistband, which means that it's 1 long piece of fabric, and then you cut it out and fold it in half, right? You fold it in half long or wrong sides together. So here's my piece. And on a knit fabric, best way to tell which is the right side and which is the wrong side, the right side is going to have the, you'll be able to see all of the rows of the knit, and you'll be able to see the little chevrons across, okay? And on the back, it's gonna be like fuzzier usually. So that's how you tell the difference. So on a waistband like this, it's a straight waistband. So the idea is it gets folded in half and it's straight all the way around, straight across the body, okay? So on a waistband like this, and the way that it's constructed, you basically just fold it like a hot dog or a taco or whatever your choice is. You fold it in half, and then you're gonna pin it with the right sides together from one center back. So this is where my zipper goes. One center back all the way around the skirt to the other center back, okay? So I'm gonna pin that on and show you what that looks like. Now I don't have all of my darts sewn on here, so I'm gonna have to go back and do that. So you would finish your darts, and then you would come back and you would sew on your waistband because you need your darts to take out the fullness of the waist before you come back and sew on your waistband. I'm gonna pin this in this direction so you guys can see what it would look like finished. So you're gonna sew this all the way around on your seam line. With this pattern's 1/2 inch seam allowance, so you're gonna sew your 1/2 inch seam allowance. And when you get to your darts, the darts should always be pinned and pressed towards the center of the body. So the little flap on the inside gets pinned and pressed towards the center of the body. So if it's in the center back, it gets pinned towards or pressed towards the back of the body. That's just a standard thing. Okay, so I have pinned the waistband on. Now this is right sides together. So you are going to sew along the seam allowance here. And then when it gets flipped up, you have that finished edge of your skirt, okay? So you would pin it on all the way around and you would sew it across all the way around. And this is your waistband right at your waist. And this is your pocket. And the rest of it goes around the back here, right? This is awkward, I'm sorry. So this is my pocket on my side. This is my dart here, which takes out the fullness. And you would sew the waistband straight across the top, okay? Now, for your zipper, if you have an invisible zipper, right? I have a video on invisible zippers for tutorials, but if you have an invisible zipper, you would line it up and sew one side down and then the other side back up, right? If you have a regular zipper or an exposed zipper, you can baste, another term for the night. You can baste these together. And what is basting? So basting is sewing the seam. So you just sew the center back seam from the waistline to that full hip, but you're gonna sew it at the longest, widest stitch possible. So you would sew it on, most machines are a 4, so stitch length is super long, right? And what does basting do? It holds it together so that when you come back to sew on your zipper, the seam is held together and it's straight and it's not getting out of whack. Sometimes people will find that they sew the zipper and then they come back and they zip it up and one side is off, right? It's because they didn't baste the seam together. They didn't baste that seam line together. If you baste it together, it's held as one until you go back and you seam rip out those basting stitches, and those basting stitches just hold it together. So you'll see people do basting stitches by hand a lot, just big, long, wide stitches. Or you can do it on the machine, but you have to put them at the longest setting. You want to make sure that you do this because if you do it at a really small setting, a little small stitch length, then you have to go back and you're ripping out tiny, tiny stitches, right? As opposed to going back and basically you can just pull them out. If they're long enough, you could just pull the thread out and the whole thing comes out. So that is basting. It's very important if you are trying to line something up. A lot of people who do couture, or they do things where things are placed on the garment, they will actually go around and stitch it by hand so they can take out the pins and go back and stitch it on the machine, and it's actually in place. It's held in place. So basting holds something in place that you can pull out. And it's different from stay stitching because stay stitching, you sew it within the seam allowance, right? And that holds it in place as well. It holds it as one as well. But the basting, you pull out at the end. The stay stitching, you don't, okay? How is it going? Anybody learning anything tonight? I hope so. I hope we're learning something. Okay, so far on the Peggy pencil skirt, we have done the classic front pocket. This one is a slant. Sometimes you'll see the classic pocket is also at a curve, like a pair of jeans, right? So that is a classic pocket. It cuts into the front of the garment, okay? On the Edith wrap skirt that we did last week, we did an inseam pocket. Inseam pockets do not affect the front of the garment. They only go inside the seam. On this skirt, we also did stay stitching. We also did understitching. Understitching being the tacking of the seam allowance to the facing of the pocket. We did some understitching here, understitching there. And then we did stay stitching to hold the pocket as one to the skirt front. We covered some darts, a little bit of dart action. And darts remove the fullness. They remove the fullness from the garment at the waist. And basically because if you're fullest at your hip here, you have extra fabric usually in the center, right? But if you are fullest at your midsection, sometimes you don't actually have a dart, or you have like an upside down dart. Like here, if your midsection is fuller or your bust is fuller, then your darts are underneath, right? So, but on a skirt, I would not recommend putting darts underneath of, if you have a full lower stomach, do not put darts under that because you don't want to accentuate it. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about for tonight is the hem, okay? Excuse me. So you have a lot of options for hemming your garment. The two options that I have listed on our sewing instructions for this skirt is either a blind hem, or the double rolled hem. So on the double rolled hem, you're going to turn your fabric 1/4 of an inch and you're going to stitch it. And then you're going to press that edge so that it's nice and straight, and you can trim it if you need to trim it. And then you roll it again and you stitch it again at 1/4 of an inch. And that gives you a double rolled hem. And it's straight and should be beautiful because you've pressed it. You press it twice. I use it a lot for special occasion fabrics, and I hem wedding dresses and prom dresses and bridesmaids dresses that way. And I like that over a rolled hem foot because I feel like the rolled hem foot for me sometimes is not a guarantee. And then you also have the option of a blind hem. A blind hem is when you stitch, so your hem is rolled, right? You roll your fabric and then you catch just the hem, and then you go in for one stitch, and then you catch the hem again, and then you go into your skirt for one stitch. Or if you're gonna do it on the machine, you roll this back and you stitch with your blind stitch, which looks like ... zigzag, ... zigzag, ... zigzag, right? Now I have some tutorial videos on this. I actually love doing the blind hem on the machine. Once you get the hang of it, it's super easy, right? And you can do it anytime. A lot of people make pretty good amount of money using the blind hem on the machine because it's very quick and it's very easy to do, and it's an industry standard for a lot of men's trousers, men that need their pants hemmed, or what else? Little kids that need it hemmed. Usually, I do a lot of special occasion. I used to do a lot of alterations, and that's a huge thing, doing the blind hem. And so if you do it by hand, that's great. You can basically guarantee that you're going to get that one tiny prick stitch. You prick it through the skirt front and you come back out and you continue in the seam allowance, and then you prick to the front one more time. So the blind hem on the machine, that one zigzag stitch is the only one that you see in the skirt front, okay? So I'll be putting up another video tutorial because I'm gonna do this skirt that way. I was on the fence as to whether I was gonna do a blind hem or do a cover stitch on my machine as well. I'm looking to get a new cover stitch machine so that I can show a lot of really cool features on how to use it if you are interested. But for right now, I am going to show the blind hem tutorial in another video because I think it's really cool and I think that you guys should practice it. It's actually super easy to do. It's another thing that's very intimidating. Somebody says do a blind hem, it's very intimidating, but it's actually really easy. The last thing I want to show you guys, which I'm going to be working on making a journal for sewing ideas. But this here I have added in my pattern. This is new to my patterns here. So as you're working through your garment, I'm going to have the section at the end of the pattern for construction notes. And you can actually sketch on here, or you could color on here, or you can write in the margin things that you want to do, or as you're sewing it, you can write down a note that says, you know, do this next time, or use this size for the skirt and use this size for the waist, that kind of stuff. So this is a new section for my patterns here, and I think it's really helpful. One other thing on this skirt that is optional is a back slit here, right? So exactly the same way as I was talking about with the zipper. If your center back is sewn all the way down the back of the skirt and you have that seam line already, so this is my center back where my zipper goes. So I'd follow this seam all the way to the bottom and it's sewn together. There's a seam line here, right? To do the slit, you would turn up your hem allowance and you'll stitch down one side of that seam line at 1/4 inch, cross the seam line, and then stitch down the other side, right? And then you just go back, just like the basting stitches that I talked about. You would go back and you would pick out that center, and you're left with a stitched slit right at the center back. The slit is super helpful if you pick a fabric that doesn't have any stretch and you basically need that walking space or the space below your knees. If the skirt is below your knees or at the knee, you need that room to kind of walk. So I added the slit in the back as an option, which is functional. It's functional and it's a really cute detail. So I think I have gotten as far as I can get for this class time here. We went about 1 hour and 15 minutes. And I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions to let me know. If you think of anything after class, if you want to email me, my email is jacqueline@jacquelineterry.com. Again, my link in bio has all of this information. It has the Sewing Saturdays page. It has products I recommend page. It has all of these things, all of the resources. It has the shop where you can find the patterns, and you can find quite a few free resources in there as well. The measurement sheet right now is free, and there is also a freebie classic pocket pattern that you can download. It is literally it's basically the exact same pieces, but that one has a curve on it. So it's basically like a jeans pocket. So the classic pocket pattern has a pocket facing, and it has a pocket, and then it has like a fake skirt or trousers front so that you can have a front of your garment, the facing, and then the pocket to practice. And that's free right now in the shop. That's a freebie. So you can work through it. That comes with an instruction booklet as well so that you have the information, and it has a video on that page as well so you can see how I sewed it and the instructions in the packet as well. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm gonna take questions while I'm cleaning up. And I'm also going to be posting a video probably tomorrow of the finishing touches on this skirt. I usually get a little bit farther along on this skirt, but I want to go back and serge it because I really want to wear this. So I have my pocket here and my dart and my waistband. And then I'm going to add a zipper in the back. I'm probably going to do a Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. Don't forget to follow my page and join. I have a group on my website. I have a group on Facebook under Sewing Saturdays, in case you guys are sewing and you get stuck. Or don't forget to sign up for the registration in my link in bio under Sewing Saturdays. Again, that's a super just information email that goes out every week, once a week, and it has the information on what we're going to be sewing, which pattern we're going to be doing, any information that you're going to need if you want to follow along for class. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for following along for my Wednesday night pattern run through, and our next live class is going to be Saturday at 12 noon. 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. And if you missed the run through tonight, or you aren't going to be able to make class on Saturday afternoon, or you'd like to check out the classes that I've previously done, those are in my link in bio under Sewing Saturdays on the Sewing Saturdays page, and they are all the way at the bottom. There is a playback playlist, and so my classes are going to be located there. So everything is on the Sewing Saturdays page that you could possibly want. So let me know if you guys have any questions, and let me know if you have any suggestions or any projects that you guys want to work through, or any tutorials that you want to see. I'm always taking information. That's also on the Sewing Saturdays page. There's a section that's like a get in touch section, and you can type in there any kind of tutorials that you want to see, anything that you would like to see a tutorial for. So I'm always taking some recommendations, and thank you guys so much for joining me. I am going to check out and go put my kids to bed. So